Hi, my name is Miraj Ahmed. I have been establishing, creating project management offices for a couple of decades now at different industries. This is a passion for me, and I'm a program turnaround program expert as well. And this is my little, I guess, effort or to kind of share with you what I have found to be the main reasons for project failures, and to be cautious about that in the beginning of the when we're starting the projects or when we are planning the projects, as well as um, when we are doing when we are turning around the projects, to be kind of wary of these things and see that what needs which levers to pull to basically give you the biggest benefit, and the low hanging fruits, if you will. So I've tried to categorize the different reasons that I have found for project failures into 5 different categories. These are not in any necessarily in any order of magnitude that this are sorted in any way right now. I'm just trying to kind of basically give the different areas, and then we can basically drill into each of the different area on the subsequent videos, and then see that if this may be able to help you in your specific projects. So the 5 areas that I've divided this into is has to do with governance, lack of solid project plan, poorly managed projects, lack of requirements or solid requirements, and then lack of organizational support. So those are the 5 areas that I've divided it in. Now, what I want to do is basically kind of go into each of these different areas and give you some sense of what that area pertains, if you will, at a high level. This is, again, this is kind of the top reasons that I have found, and hopefully it's encapsulating the different the issues that you may be having with your projects, and may be able to guide you for the new projects that you're going to be starting on. So from a governance perspective, there are 4 basic areas that I have found under governance. So I'm going to try to highlight these as we go, and then basically we'll see if I can add some animation during my video editing, to give you some more to be able to easily kind of follow with me. So the 4 different areas that I found is under governance is lack of strategic alignment, lack of good pre-project analysis, lack of prioritization of the project in the portfolio in portfolio management, and then conflicting priorities. So for example, project versus operations, project versus another project, etc. So let's talk about each of these so we kind of understand at a high level what this means. So one of the very important things is making sure that the PMO is able to align the projects with the strategic organizational goals. Again, PMO is not kind of a standalone body, if you will. It's a shared resource, and it's helping the different areas to kind of get organized, around the common goal of the organization. We have the organizational project management that sits on the top, and then we have the portfolio, and the portfolio includes programs as well as projects, and under the programs there are projects. So that's kind of the different layers. So now kind of getting back from that to our topic at hand of the failure of the projects. So under governance, we have lack of strategic alignment is the first one. So like in Alice in Wonderland, a quote that they had is basically, if you don't know where you have to go, all the different roads can lead you there. So what that means is, and that's although it may be more lighthearted, but that's kind of typically I've found in many organizations that to be the case. Maybe they have something about where they want to go, but they are not following that. They're not tying the different activities that are going up with that very succinctly. So what is happening is basically one, we need to have, the organization needs to have some strategic goals, right? Now, defining that and more about strategic goals is not part of this. Maybe I'll cover that in a different video. But the important thing here is, for example, you have certain goals, targets that you're trying to meet, right, by certain years, if you will. Maybe in the next 3 years, you have the organization has certain targets, for business growth, for revenue growth, if you will, from kind of moving certain other targets that they may have market share, right? So those are the different strategic goals that they may have. And then in order to feed those strategic goals, in order to accomplish those strategic goals, they take upon the different projects, the different programs, etc. Right? So one of the very important things is to make sure that you are the organization, and let me just make sure that I can, maybe use some annotations here. So that the different projects and different programs that you're taking on are somehow aligned with those strategic goals. Now, one important thing to note here is one of the, as this is not typically defined, in the strategic goals of the company, but as part of it, stability needs to be part of the strategic goals as well. That's kind of a, part of whatever strategic strategy that you're defining. Your systems need to be stable. Your organization needs to be stable in order to basically accomplish those. So what do I mean by that? From a technology perspective, if the technology is getting very old and it's getting, kind of unstable, or becoming a risk, you have to have some measurement, to be able to, prioritize that and see that, if that needs to be replaced, etc. Where does that sit in your goals? You don't want to be kind of too much focused on, okay, this is what these targets we are trying to achieve, but then basically the foundation kind of, is weak, that you're building upon. So that's one thing that, about strategic goals. Make sure that there are different ways that you can make sure that you're measuring the different projects that you have against that strategic goal. You can have weightages, if you will, for the different strategic goals that the company has, and then you can measure the different projects, potential projects that you have, and see that how much each of those are, progressing your different strategic goals, and then you can see that, overall weightage wise, which projects are more important to get done, right? Obviously, like every organization has limitation on resources, whether it be human resources or, dollar resources, etc., etc. So you want to make sure that you are prescriptively aligned with the strategic goals. You don't want to kind of have, things going on which are not kind of feeding into the strategy. Okay. Now, one of the very important things that we have, and some of these things, as you'll see as I walk through this thing, have all dependencies, etc., in theirs. In order to have the strategic alignment, what you need to make sure is you have a well-defined project pipeline, a very transparent project pipeline. You have an intake process. You are monitoring all the different projects that are going on in the organization. It doesn't help that if you have just a certain project going through this pipeline, but other projects are not kind of being looked at. They are kind of basically under the radar, right? Because your resources are getting consumed there as well. So you need to make sure that all the projects are basically being monitored in that project pipeline, if you will. And they have some kind of standard. Now, so that's important. So that kind of tells you what your resources are allocated with, if you will, at all the different times. Now, obviously, the resources will have a day job as well. So what you do is that you have some kind of you mature into this. You won't have this day one, but you mature into this thing that you have some kind of idea or some allocation of all these resources, that how much of these resources are available for project work outside of their regular day jobs, if you will, right? And that's kind of basically you use in order to see that how your resources are getting utilized, etc. So again, that's what about the strategic alignment. First, you need to have the organization needs to have strategic goals, and then second, you need to make sure that all the projects that are going on are somehow mapped to that strategic goals, are prioritized based on those strategic goals. One suggestion I have is, if your organization doesn't have a clear strategic goal, obviously that's something that needs to be built, but also you can start with very quickly kind of builds start measuring things against some of the basic very common criteria that cost savings, around profitability, around stability of the system, if you will. So you can kind of basically put some general things together in order to start the process. And as the more strategic goals get defined, which, if for whatever reason, if they were not, they should be, but if they're not, you can start making sure that there is some kind of criteria which is a more objective criteria that you kind of you have in order to have that alignment, a common alignment for all the projects that are getting started. Also note that basically there's not additional items that may be kind of added on, which are not kind of serving towards your strategic goals in these projects, right? So kind of just have a cleaner look at when that all the projects are, how all the projects are getting aligned with your strategic goals. So that's about strategy. Second is the pre-project analysis. So what we want to make sure is we don't get into analysis paralysis, but we need to have enough information in order to say that, okay, this, to measure the project's, outcome benefits, if you will. So again, what you don't want to do is you don't want to stifle the, the business growth by, everything has a lot of analysis getting done, but you need to have some standards that are built based on the project, approximate project size, etc. And then you can have like a t-shirt sizing of the projects, right? What does that mean? Basically, say the large, medium, small kind of thing, right? You have some just general rule of thumb, if you will, that you can create, that large maybe certain number of time period that you're assuming, and maybe certain number of dollar amounts, etc. So based on that, you need to have some standard that this is what needs to be captured in order to even consider these projects, right? So you don't want to kind of bottleneck your pipeline, if you will, with things that have not been kind of vetted out well. Okay, so that's kind of what that means. Again, there are different things that you can create here, etc. You can basically see how this is helping your strategic alignment, if you will. So you can capture goals, metrics that that would help to understand that how these different projects are helping with that strategy. These need to be more objective, as much objective as you can, in order to basically help you pick the right projects, if you will. You can do also ROI analysis, financials, etc. Obviously, right? So different criteria need to be done, but these need to be kind of more, vetted out well. Again, depending on the project size, you can have, more stringent, analysis requirements, if you will, or less stringent, again, depending on the project size. Prioritization and project portfolio management. Again, we've been kind of talking about this already, and these, as I mentioned, some of these are dependent and some of these are linked, if you will. So you need to make sure that the right projects are getting prioritized, right? Understand, let's not kind of, have a feel good approach, if you will, where basically what that means is you're trying to just kind of accept all these projects thinking that, okay, this is going to magically somehow these resources would be available and be able to do this thing. And you're trying to kind of sort of like boil the ocean, if you will, by just kind of having a very loose prioritization criteria or just not very realistic prioritization criteria. You have to map these to the key resources of the that are going to be working on the project. Make sure that they have the bandwidth on the project, so that you don't fail the projects, if you will. In other words, you don't build so much work that is not able to kind of go through that pipeline, if you will, and then become kind of a bottleneck and just make those projects not being successful. Okay, so that's about lack of prioritization in the project portfolio management. Again, there are different things that you can use here. You can use the weightaging, if you will, based on the different goals you have. You can basically weight the different projects against these. You can see, map these projects with the key resources that are going to be needed on the projects, etc., and make sure that that is done. The other thing that is important here is make sure that you have again, the dependency that you have here is on the pre-project analysis. That will kind of give you some idea that who are the key resources that are required, sort of a high level idea about how much they may be required, etc. Or at least who can do much more deeper analysis if this project is approved for the analysis gate, if you will. So again, there are pre-project analysis which are done to kind of give you some idea about the sizing of the project, and a decent idea about the the benefit of this project and the strategic alignment. And then you may have another gate where you're allocating some resources to do deeper analysis, to kind of figure out the project schedule, the project plan, that kind of thing, if you will. Okay. So that's about the prioritization within the project portfolio management. Now, another very important thing is you need to make sure that all your stakeholders are aligned with this thing. So conflicting priorities, what does that mean? So we've already kind of talked about it. People have day jobs as well, right? So what you don't want to do is basically, having too much contention between project and operations. So now people are saying, well, they're not free for the project. Now your project is suffering, right? Or, project A is taking on more importance than project B, and project A was not properly planned for, and it's taking more resources than we had initially scheduled for. So that's what conflicting priorities means. Now, one of the important things here is when you are doing the pre-project analysis, you should have figured out, what are the key resources, who are the key stakeholders that need to be, or who are the stakeholders that need to be involved with this thing, because that is very important here, that all the stakeholders need to be on the same page, people who are going to be doing the work on this project, or people who need to be doing further analysis on this project, or where the managers, where those people are going to be coming from. They need to make sure that they are on, we need to make sure that they are on board, and they sign up for this much percentage of their people's time during whatever the project duration happens to be, so that they are allocated, and we in case of conflicting priorities and all those things, for one, we are minimizing conflicting priorities. There are going to be some conflicting priorities that we'll have to solve during the project, but it doesn't become a major problem that we are basically, again, having a pipe dream of flushing through so many different projects, and we get into some certain constraints. If this project is important enough and we don't have the people, then we can think about basically contracting people or bringing somebody else on board. Now, typically one of the issues happens to be that you need some SME resource. SME means subject matter expert resource, and you can't just kind of pick somebody from off the street and expect them to know your company or your company's business. So you have to kind of finagle with that maybe the resource that you have in the company may need to be more allocated on the project, and somebody else needs to take his or her daily activities or part of that, that maybe easily be able to done by somebody who's not very much entrenched in the company. So that's kind of the 4 different areas within the governance stream. I'm going to stop the video now, and then we basically have a separate video that I'm going to record for the lack of solid project plan, and how to deal with some of these other issues that are within it. And then basically we'll kind of divide this into 5 different videos, so we can basically have it in sort of like more bite size